just still pictures, like the stuff that I see you posted blows me away. Because I'm the guy that I would want everything centered in the middle. And the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. So
how long have you been into that?
I started taking pictures about 2007-ish, I guess. And I got my first, I call it fancy camera, digital camera in 2008. And of course, I thought I was a photographer, Sure. So I started fiddling with that, and then I ended up taking classes in 11. So I went through the photography school. There's 4 classes you get a certificate that says you're a photographer from Maury Georgetown Tech.
Okay.
But it's G-No, so I mean, it's like good stuff.
Yeah.
So ever since then, I've just kind of piddled here and there. I've had a website for 7 years and use it very rarely, so it's pretty neat. I bought my own domain and all that. So
it's I don't know. I tell everybody I'm not the least bit artistic. I want to be. Like I appreciate it so much. I have no artistic abilities or skills.
It's one of those things that I love doing. I just don't have time.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of people ask me, why don't you put your name out there and try to get in try to make some money? I said, I need the money, but I don't have the time. And I don't want to go out and commit and say, hey, you want me to do your prom or your wedding, and then something come up with work and I can't go. So that scares me, and I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, because it's a commitment both ways.
Right.
It's your name on a business and your lifelong career.
Well, my uncle
fire chief
has been a photographer for probably 40 years, and he's really good. And his daughter got married, and he wanted me to do it, the pictures. I was like, well, I feel honored that you would ask me to do it. And then my son got to the state championship for football in North Carolina. So I called him. I was like, hey, we got a little problem. He's like, what's that? I was like, Joey made the state championship. He's like, man, that's awesome. I was like, it's on the 15th.
There's a little problem.
It's on the 15th. He goes, okay. He's like, oh. So it kind of, he ended up getting somebody else to do it, which is fine. But I felt about that tall. So but it happens, and I just don't want to be with my job. I can subject to be anywhere. It's short notice. I don't want to have to go to, Marion and get called and say, hey, you need to come to Conway. There's a house fire or something.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I'm just still a little skittish. I try to do things here and there for friends, but like I'm doing a wedding next weekend, but it's a small one. It's a very intimate wedding. So
are you still doing, I'm going to use the wrong term, I'm sure. Are you still doing shift work?
No.
Or are you kind of 8 to 5?
8 to 5, yeah. Yeah, it's been 2012, I think.
Yeah.
I promoted to, it was battalion chief then, but it's actually an assistant chief's role, number 2.
Right.
I was over operations, and I got promoted in, I think it was April 2nd, 2012. And that's been an adjustment. I'm still miss it sometimes, but now I'm kind of that guy that works 50 hours a week now, so I'm like the extreme opposite.
Yeah. Well, and all of the folks that I know in public safety, it's like you want a good leader. You want to be the leader, but you miss why you got into it seems like.
Yeah, it gets to that point where you're striving to get where you want to be, and then one day it's like, okay, here I am, and now you're neck deep in stress, and you're like, whoa, is this really what I signed up for? And I think a lot of my problem is I grew up in the fire service, and my dad was the assistant chief, and so I saw it from day one, and sometimes I focus too hard on trying to make it like it was, and it's not. I mean, when my memories of the fire department when I was a kid are not the fire department today.
Right. And it never will be.
And that's tough.
It is. Well, the weird thing for me with like the way it was, so I did the Myrtle Beach PD Citizens Police Academy 8-9 years ago. And I'm doing ride-alongs, and it's fun, and I know these guys from work, but I get to ride along with 2 young men, and they're both just, this is what I'm doing until something better comes along.
Right.
When you and I grew up, you were a firefighter, you were a police officer, you were a teacher till the day you died, and that was it. And when I met these guys, and they're like, just till something different comes along, it just struck me as so strange because it's such a commitment. It takes, in my opinion, a selfless person. I mean, you guys commit so much of your time and yourself to it to just be like, until something better comes along.
Well, I just finished my master's, and I had a class, and I feel like I talk about this a lot, but it really sums it up what I'm dealing with at work. I had to write a paper that was, I think, 10 or 15 pages long, and I had to pick a topic, and somehow I came across millennials in the fire service because it's kind of like the new thing. We're starting to get a lot of those, So I did a lot of research, and what I learned was the tenure went from 7 to 9 years down to 3 to 5 just in the past couple of years, because they're looking for the next best thing. Some are interested in benefits and long-term. most of them are looking for like $1 an hour more, and they'll break camp.
Yeah.
And that's police, fire, that's everywhere. And it's not just the fire service. And I think that was my biggest takeaway is, today's generation, like my son, he's 16, almost 17. I would be surprised if the kids his age, when they get to 20, 25, they'd stay in a job for a year. And I don't know how the industry is going to take that. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. And even like with us in the private sector is like you talk about benefits and retirement, stuff like that. So that's all on them.
Right.
And so they may make a little more money. It may look more lucrative up front, but you don't put that back end component on to the public's. Oh my God. I mean, there's guys that have been in this stuff their whole life that'll make more money on the back end than they ever made on the front end.
Yeah.
And, so that's just part of the compromise.
Well, I work for the city, and we have a lot of fringe benefits. We have a lot of good stuff to offer. And, you get these young guys, like I interviewed a guy today, he was born in 1998. I mean,
isn't that weird to you?
It's
so weird to me.
I feel like I'm 100 years old, but, and it's just, his mindset's different than my mindset is. I have to learn to adjust to their mindset, and it's tough.
It is. It's challenging. I was at a Motorola meeting, and some guys were the conversation was, I have a millennial that is an amazing employee, smart as a whip, but we couldn't come to terms on fringe stuff. I had to let him go.
Right.
So I raised my hand, and I'm like, what was it that you guys couldn't come to terms on? He wanted a rug in his office and a TV in the break room.
Wow.
And I'm like, so this guy was so good
that
you're going to let him go over $300 worth of stuff because you didn't have a TV in the break room growing up and you didn't have a rug in your office. It probably still don't. It doesn't make any sense. Like any other relationship, there needs to be some compromise, and it's not going away.
Right. Well, we had a guy that came in a couple of years ago, and they told him he needed to sweep the floor and mop and all that stuff. It's just what we do. There's chores.
Right.
He's like, I don't know how to do that. We thought it was a joke, but the kid his parents had never made him sweep and mop the floor.
Yeah.
And in part of my research, there was an article that I found about a guy who had never cut grass, never operated a lawnmower, didn't know how to crank it, never even sat on a riding lawnmower or anything, had no idea. Yeah. And so they gave him a hard time about it. And come to find out, he lived in an apartment his whole life. He's from a big city. Yeah. He said, I didn't have grass. Yeah. Why would I go drive a lawnmower? I don't have and you think about it, we take things like that for granted.
Yeah.
And like in the fire service, we're self-supportive. In the city, we have the grounds and maintenance that cuts the grass in every city building except for the fire department. It's just what we do. We're there 24 hours a day, so we take care of our own stuff. So that's part of the job. You got to cut grass, you got to sweep, you got to mop, you got to dust, you got to clean toilets.
Every time I go, man, they're always cleaning. They're always cleaning apparatus and vehicles.
It's just what we do. And and you get these guys that I guess I take it for granted. And then these guys, I've never operated I've never swept and mopped. Yeah. Really? I'm like, that's the thing?
Yeah, that would be bizarre.
Yeah. And it might have just been a fluke that one time, but then I did the research and it kind of confirmed it. And I said, well, it's not just us.
Yeah, I went to a meeting years ago, and they were talking about millennials, right? I think millennials get a bad rep, but anyways, they're talking about millennials, and the story, and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember it, but the story was there was a young lady that went to architectural school. That's where they design. Yeah, architectural school. And downtown Conway building, and we're going to revamp this into apartments, and we're going to put a giant green garden on top of the building. And so she takes it down to the engineers, her boss, and shows it to him. He's like, this ain't going to work. She runs out the room crying and carrying on because she'd never been told no her whole life.
Yep. And
he's like, the design's beautiful.
Right.
It's a 200-year-old building, and we can't put 50 tons of dirt on the roof.
Right.
That's why it won't work.
Well, I didn't get the best grade on the paper, but I linked it to three things. I said, the reason millennials are like they are is three things. And this was based on research. This isn't opinionated. It's the no child left behind syndrome, where they're going to pass no matter what. So they get to the point where, are they really going to try because they know they're going to pass? Yeah. You remember that whole initiative? Participation trophies, because it's just like you said, they've never been told no in their life. And I read a whole 10-page article about that, about how bad participation trophies were. And you hear a lot of people talk bad about it, but it's just, you think it's just opinionated. But there's evidence to support that. Yeah. And it puts them in a bad mood. And then Then you have the spankings. That's like bad. That's a bad thing now. And back when I was a kid, you acted up, you got a spanking.
Yeah.
And those three things, every article I read, one of the three showed up, and they said, if you brought all three of those back, some of these children would act better. And I was like, well, I mean, I get it, but it's 2019, and that's just. I feel like I'm watching Leave It to Beaver. Thinking about my childhood. About you see how structured life was back then, and compared to my childhood, it's totally different.
It is. I told we moved all the time growing up, so I would always be trying to make new friends. Yeah. And back then, and it still does today, but it took a village. That really. Yeah. So my mother, I'd be like, Mom, I'm going to go play at Lee's house. Is that okay? She's like, yeah. What's Lee's mother's phone number? Right. And so she'd call your mama, and be like, Miss Hendrick, this is Gloria, Miles' mom. If he acts up, you whoop his tail and let me know when I get back. So I would go to your place, and I'd be like this right here. I knew how my mom would tell. Right. I didn't know how your mom did. Exactly. So I was an angel, and now I go forward and I watch like my daughter, and before she was born, my wife and I, we sit there having a conversation. She cries, we're not picking her up. Yeah. We're not doing that, bro. That lasted about one day. Yeah. And then it turned into not telling her no. My wife she'd want to go buy some nonsense, and it wasn't about a lot of money. It was just. And so she would tell her no, the baby would cry, and she'd go buy it. And I'm like, you have to stop. She's like, well, it's not a big deal. It wasn't expensive. I was like, that's not the big deal. The big deal is you told her no. Right. She cried, and now you give into it. And I'm like, it's a lot easier to address this at 1 than at 16.
You got that right.
So
it's a society thing, and it's just I remember as a child, seeing it, I experienced it, and there's a difference between a spanking and a little popping here and there. Yeah. There's people getting drug out of grocery stores and, by their hair. And that was commonplace. You acted up. You knew that. Yeah. You can't do that now. No, and it's just.
I can remember one time my brother and I are in the back seat of my mom's Monte Carlo, and we're fighting. Bro, it's like Highway 17. She stops in the middle of the road and just turns around and goes to swatting at us. And there's cars flying around her, But yeah, it was just a different time. It was completely different time.
But it was a respect thing, too. I remember in first grade, the principal coming in and taking the kid out of the class with his paddle into the hallway, and we all looked out the window, and he got a spanking, and he brought him back in there and sat him in a chair and left, and the kid started acting better. And I remember that. I remember that very vividly because I didn't want to be that guy.
Well, the other thing that I remember about back then and teachers that I see and hear about from teacher friends is, and I'm still the same way, is whatever the teacher said is what happened. Yep. There was none of this, the teacher said this and the kid goes to crying and now the teacher's, that's not the way that worked in my life. Right. Whatever the teacher said, that's what happened, and I had to deal with the consequences. Yep. And even right now, and we've not run into it, but if the teacher says my child does something, then that's what happened. Right. Why would they lie? It makes no sense to me.
When I was in first grade, you used to have to stand against the wall with your right shoulder, couldn't talk, single file. Everything was like systematic. You get in the lunchroom and it's like this. And I remember standing there and the little kid's like, let's get up on the stage. And I was like, why would I want to get on the stage? He's like, just step up there and step back. And I didn't want to do it. Well, he did it. So I did it. And after he was gone, the teacher grabbed me and snatched me up, took me to the office. She made me call my dad at the fire station and tell him what I did. And that absolutely, I thought that it was the end of the world. Yeah. He was going to come drag me out of school. And he said he laughed more than he was upset because I was crying. I was screaming, please don't hurt me, or whatever I was saying, and I had to ask his partner for him. I was first grade. Yeah. Never was in trouble the rest of my life. Yeah. In school.
I got a paddling in 7th grade for being late. I never was like a bad kid in school. Yeah. Until substitutes would come in. Oh, yeah. And then I'd have my buddy that's wanting to lay out a class, so I would say I was him, and some kid would say, no, that's not him. Then the principals get involved. But I just thought, for me, that was just fun. But now I look at it with my daughter and being older, at 16, I thought it was fun and funny. Right. Now, as a parent, I look at it as you're being disruptive and my kid can't learn.
Disrespectful.
Yes. Yep. So, but that comes with age, though.
It does.
We've kind of all got to go through that stuff.
You look at your parents back then and you're thinking, why are you being so hard? Why are you worried about what time I got back? And driving and things like that. And I mean, I felt like I could rule the world when I was 15 years old. I had my driver's license at 15. I'd borrow my mom's car and stay gone. And I felt like an adult. And I look now, my son's 16. It terrifies me. He's driving.
Oh my God, it scares me.
He
to
lives
death.
2.5 hours away, and it just terrifies me. He drives across the street.
Yeah, it scares me to
you
death.
know, and it's just a different time.
Yeah, whenever my daughter's in 3rd grade. When I was in 4th, but the summer between 4th and 5th grade, I had a little Honda Trail 50.
Yeah.
And my brother and I would get on that thing, and we'd be gone 10 hours a day in the summertime.
Yeah.
I would lose my mind right now, not being able to get in touch with my kids. So you can't blame it on the millennials, right?
And that's you think about when we were kids, we didn't have, it was the street lights come on, it's time to go home. Or my mom would come out and blow the horn in the car or yell out the front porch, and hopefully I was close enough to hear it. And now it's all cell phones and stuff, and they're not back within a second. You know, you want to find the iPhone or call the FBI and all this stuff. And it's just, I remember 2nd grade, I would walk home from school by myself.
I walked home in kindergarten. I remember telling everybody that I was going to walk home. I can remember the buses driving off. I'm walking home when the light turns green. I cross the street. I don't know how far I got, maybe a mile and a half, and my mom found me.
Oh gosh,
that was another one of those times that you took a beating. But could you imagine your 5-year-old kid not getting off the school bus and just said, "Hey, I'm walking home today"?
No.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. No, that kind of stuff terrifies me. So again, I mean, we can't blame just millennials. Because it's all of us, and I catch myself doing stuff that I swore I would never do as a parent.
It's just a whole different mindset now, you know, and it's just, and now like I said, I have a new hire that's born in 1998, you know, and I was out of high school and had a career by then.
I moved to Myrtle Beach in 98. Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah. It's strange. So what's the process for these new hires to become a firefighter in South Carolina anyways?
Yeah, well, it's different everywhere. You know, it depends on which department. For us, they have to put in an application, and we actually revamped our hiring process a couple of years ago. So ours is probably longer than it should be. It takes about 90 days to get through the process. But we want to check all the backgrounds up front, because what we're learning is we're going through interviews and physical fitness tests and this, and this. And we get down to make a contingent offer, and then we decide to run their background or check their credit. You know, they've got, 2 repossessed cars and a foreclosed on house, or they're serial killers. I mean, I don't know. I'm just talking about But so anyway, our process is a lot longer. Then there's an interview involved. We do a physical fitness test, and we try to do everything with a committee. You know, we established a couple of guys, and they're the ones that run the whole process. So they're seeing these people, because you got to think, guy walks in the door, you got 15 minutes with him. You got to decide if he going to be a career for the fire department. And fire service is a lot different than an office job. Yeah. It cost us about $5,000 to start. You know, to bring them in the door. They got to do a medical physical, their fire gear, their uniforms, the time, all that stuff.
The radio.
Yeah, the radio. We want to go there. But it's just, there's so much involved up front, cost-wise, and, you're taking a gamble. Yeah. They're going to be really good, they're going to be really bad. Yeah. Or they're just going to be that guy. Of course, they're on a 6-month probationary period. The training, for our department, we don't have a training facility, and we don't have the resources to send them through like what we call a rookie school. So we have to either use Horry County Fire Rescue, Myrtle Beach Fire. We have the option to go to the State Fire Academy, but, we've got local resources, so we try to keep it local. We have been known to piecemeal something together where we have one guy that teaches 2 people a class. I mean, that's fine. They're getting the training, but it's not the same when there's 12 people, where you got the camaraderie, or you've got a partner today and a different partner another day. It gives you a different feel. So we're a little different. Horry County, they host about 3 recruit classes a year, and they run it's like 12 to 16 weeks. You come out with a pile of certifications. It's kind of like the police academy, but it's local. It's kind of what it is. I think Myrtle Beach does 1 a year, sometimes maybe 2. But they all have their training facilities, so it's easier for them.
Do you guys see the same turnover like they see in the police side of the public safety? It
ebbs and flows. My department went 16 months without turnover at all. So we kind of got commonplace, and it was kind of fell into like a slump where we just accepted everybody's here. We're good to go. And I've lost 5 people in a week.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and it's not like they all left for the same thing. It's, one guy's going to work with his brother. One guy's going to go to a bigger department, which is awesome. He's going to go into Georgia in the metro Atlanta area. So, it's different things, but it's just the timing was bad. It all happened at once. So, the police, I think the police is more going to chase that dollar.
It seems more financial.
Yeah. And in our area, it seems like they're all fighting for each other. They all get approval to have a raise, and they get so much %. So they all want to jump ship and go there. So it's just they're fighting over each other.
Yeah,
and that's what I see. I noticed that in our area specifically, you're getting a lot of Northerners come down because of where we're at. It's Myrtle Beach, it's the Grand Strand, that kind of thing. So you're drawing them down here, and they'll get a bunch of training, they'll leave.
Right.
And the fire service especially, they'll come from Ohio, get a bunch of training, stay 2 years, go back to Ohio. They'll walk back in the door making $80,000.
Yeah.
It's just hard for them to get the training there, so they'll come down here and bite the bullet for a little while.
Get the training, get the experience.
Yeah, and it's just I thought that it was just maybe a fluke, but now that I've been in it for a while and really start to see it's common. It happens a lot. And it's unfortunate, but then again, you get the guy from New York or Ohio or somewhere that comes in and he's a lifer. He's here and he's not going anywhere. Yeah. So you don't know what you're getting.
Yeah, it's like we mentioned earlier with the lifers. That's just all I remember growing up.
Right.
And I spend more time with the police side of public safety than fire. But all those guys, it seems like they got another, because of the working the shifts. It's almost like they all have some other business, some other job, some other hustle.
Well, yeah, and the fire department is never really paid a lot. And I say the fire department as a whole, just the fire service in general. Public safety is always underpaid, overwork, underpaid. It's kind of like teachers. But a lot of the fire department, because of their schedule, ours is a little different, but most of them are 24 on, 48 off. You got 2 full days. Why wouldn't you have a second job? And some of the guys, they're like, I'll just stay at home. But I always had a part-time job, so I don't know how that life would be, but I think I'd get bored.
Yeah. What other jobs were you doing?
I worked at a furniture store for 10 years. So I did a lot of manual labor on my days off. I feel like I worked harder on my days off than I did at work.
I worked at a furniture store for a while, packing couches and furniture up steps.
And he had some mattress stores as well. So I get a lot of mattress deliveries, a lot. Yeah. I mean, in northern end of North Myrtle Beach, I know almost every street because we were just in there a lot. I mean, I would work 24 hours on shift. I'd leave, we get off at 7 a.m. That's shift change. Had to be there by 9, so like a little lull in the middle. I'd get there at 9-ish, 9:30, and I would leave there at 5:36 every day. And I did that every day of the week. The only day I had off was Saturday and Sunday if I was off from shift. And, working. And if you do the math, it's like 100 hours a week at one point.
Right now, since you made chief, are you also doing all the emergency management for the city?
Yep.
That happened after chief, or were you doing some of that before?
It was package deal. I knew that the chief before me was the emergency manager for the city, so going into the role, I knew that was going to be part of my role. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall that at some point that's where I was going to end up. It was always a pipe dream. I always wanted to be the chief, and even since I was a little kid. But I guess it's one of those I never thought I'd get there. And then it's kind of, you get to a point in your career where it's starting to be almost a reality. So I started really looking into some of those courses and kind of getting a feel of what I was getting into if I ever offered the job. And then when I did, I hadn't been the chief 6, 7, 8 months, I guess it was, when we had that big flood in 15. So I had to learn real fast.
Yeah. So you've had a busy few years.
Yeah.
So we had that flood, then we had
Matthew,
2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and then Florence.
Florence was hopefully that's a career. That's a career opportunity, I guess, or a once in a lifetime.
So crazy.
Yeah.
And it took so long.
Yeah.
The storm comes in and the flood's coming.
We just sat there and spun off the coast for 3 days. And, like we talked about Matthew, 8, 12 hours in and out, come and gone, wind, rain, the whole bit. Then when, of course, we had a flood on the back end, but the event itself was in and out. Yeah. Florence lasted 3 days. We were all, we kind of upstaffed a little early because we thought we were going to get some wins up front, which we didn't get. And we really just sat there for 3 days and stared at each other. So then we started getting a little antsy and a little, then we had the patience factor, and then everything started happening. And it just didn't slow down.
How long did you work? Like 3 or 4 weeks?
21 days.
Yeah.
Before I went home.
Yeah,
I would go home at night
right.
After about the first week, I started going home at night. But you get home at 10 and up at 5. I mean, it's just,
What One thing I noticed, is once the DNR maps came out, they were very accurate up north and got less accurate as they came down. And my take on that was they had no way to calculate the water that couldn't get back to a tributary.
Right.
And that's why I assumed that it was less devastating further down than the map showed, because, the map showed water over 707 in Sauk City. We ended up moving 3 of our employees out of their homes.
Oh, wow.
I took all of our people, and none of them got flooded, but we pulled all their equipment, all their furniture, their appliances. We pulled everything, because none of the 3 had flood insurance.
Right.
They shouldn't have. They didn't need it. And then we ended up putting them all back, but fortunately they didn't get it. But, man, the whole area was just devastated.
We've done a few talks, myself, the city administrator, and the public information officer, because we spent 21 days together, the 3 of us. So we got a story to tell. And we went up to Aiken last week and talked to the Planners Association for South Carolina. And we did like a timeline, and we showed a video of, doom and despair, I guess. It was North Carolina did like a press conference. And then he backed up and went through 13. Did you realize it flooded in 13 in Conway?
I don't remember. So I remember Floyd, back in 99 or whenever it was, because that's when I got here. That's the first storm I ever went through.
Right.
And I remember Floyd. I don't remember.
It was just, I don't know that there was a storm associated, but anyway, he had pictures where it flooded in 13. It wasn't bad, but it flooded. So he says, this was I don't know the storm. 14, we had the ice storm, Pax. Remember how bad that was? Yep. 15 was the Joaquin incident, where Joaquin, the hurricane, skirted the coast and dumped a bunch of rain. 16 was Matthew. 17 was Irma, which we up staff for, but nothing happened. And then 18 was Florence. But what the pattern was is that we were not prepared, and then we started getting more prepared. Now we're, especially after Florence. I feel like we can tackle anything at this point. It's for the city. Yeah. So it's just, the stuff we went through in 21 days would blow your mind. Just the decisions that were made. We had the 501 bypass project going on. We had, right in the middle of everything, we had an incident at Conway Feed and Grain, a hazmat incident. I don't know if you heard about that. Yeah. Had reactive chemicals that react, highly volatile chemicals that react to water, falling into water, bursting into flames and floating around. Yeah. I said, you can't even make this crap up.
It's the Monday morning quarterbacks are really frustrating to me, because I know the people that are working these things, and we've got people in EOCs and that kind of stuff. It's frustrating when, like, the 501 deal. All of these people screaming online about what should be done, shouldn't be done, how the city's screwing up, right, and they have zero information whatsoever.
Well, and it was driven by the state. DOT, that was a DOT project, but at the end of the day, we have photos where the project worked. Right. It was tough getting there, but it worked. It kept the road open for 3 days. And the water got up on the barricades. And a lot of people said, well, it never even flooded. Well, it did. Yeah. It was waist deep out there. Yeah. So, what would you have done if it had been completely flooded? Now, 501 our business did not flood, which is where Main Street Bridge was. But it was early indications it was going to flood day 2, and it never did. So, it's Mother Nature.
You got to prepare.
Yeah, Mother Nature, you can't prepare for it. But it really opened our eyes that we had a really good plan, but you can always do better. Yeah. And it's been kind of overwhelming since then, because when we start talking about it, it brings up all these memories. And it was a rough couple of weeks, man. I tell you. And I feel like I did 5 years worth of work in three weeks.
You probably did.
And it just, I don't know. We're a better city because of it. Yeah. And that's not just the city. I'm talking about the community.
Well, the community.
And this is one of my favorite stories to tell. But when we realized that these neighborhoods were going to flood, we got some maps from Horry County. That was the DNR maps with the 4 foot above Matthew and all this stuff. So we had 2 choices: do nothing, go tell the community. So we printed out the maps and said we need to go tell the community. So we split up teams and went out knocking on doors. Most people would cuss us out, slam the door. I've lived here 70 years. I've never seen water in my neighborhood. Yeah. And we're like, okay, well, here's the map, that kind of thing. Well, then one day, here comes water out of nowhere, and then these people are panicking.
Now it's too late.
But we had this one man, and he said, my house is going to flood. There's nothing I can do about it. It's almost too late. And he was out there without a shirt on helping his neighbor. It was a little bit higher on land. You can't make that crap up.
The community outreach and outpouring, the kids bagging sandbags at the high schools and the community.
Right.
My brother and I went down in Rosewood and Socastee, and anybody that had a U-Haul in their yard, we asked if we could help them load stuff up. Like I said, we packed all of our people out. I got work to donate, I think $5,000, and I went and bought diapers and cleaning supply, just everything we could get from Costco, buggies full of stuff from Costco. And we take it to Socastee High School to drop it off. And literally there's a guy unloading the trailer whose house is flooded, and he's trying to help other people. And the community was unbelievable during this storm.
We've never given out sandbags or sand, but we dropped a pile of sand in one of our parks and left a couple hundred sandbags. Next day, the sandbags were gone. Somebody stole them all. Well, that night, we've realized somebody had stolen. The next day, there was 2,000 sandbags donated. Don't know where they came from, but thank you.
Yeah,
and then you look at, we got photos of 50, 60 people out there like a little ant mound just doing sandbags. There was a guy in a wheelchair bent over filling sandbags.
Yeah,
and
it'll warm your heart.
Yeah, a lady from church came to me and she said, "I just want to tell you a story." I was like, "Okay." She said, "I was at Chick-fil-A in Conway and I went to the restroom and these two little girls, they were just probably 16, 17 years old. They're laughing and cutting up." And she said they had dirt all up down their arms and they're washing their arms and stuff. And she said, "You guys been filling sandbags today?" Just trying to make conversation. And she said, "Yeah, we're from Tennessee. We drove down to help fill sandbags. We're about to drive back." Drove down for 2 hours and drove back. I mean, you can't make that up.
Yeah, no, it was unreal. In the fire services, is there an apprentice kind of program? Do you put people with mentors, or is it just? There's a brotherhood there.
We're actually trying to formalize a mentor program, but in the past, especially when I came up, it was kind of you're almost kind of thrown to the wolves. When I started, I got my training and I was turned loose. I mean, it's like, all right, go fight fire. But now we're trying to formalize it. We won't, kind of the buddy system. I'm going to give you someone that'll explain the job and make sure you're getting the right stuff. You got to think these guys come in, they're working 24-hour shifts. Some of them kind of get lost in the shuffle. They kind of slide over and they kind of get stuck in that little rut. And then that's their career is in the rut because nobody ever takes the time to help them out.
Right.
And then one day they get a new partner and they say, "Well, let's go do this." Well, I don't know how to do that. Right. Well, why not? Well, I've never been shown that. And it's a deficiency thing. So about 5-6 years ago when I was promoted to battalion chief, which is like an assistant chief, and I formalized our proficiency packet. So when you come out of recruit class or you're just hired, you have to go through certain steps to even be checked off to fight fire. And it's little things like entering reports on the computer down to how to fight fire. It's just there's groups and stuff. And until then, it really wasn't a process, but now it's very systematic for us. And you have to go through the steps and show proficiency. It's not a check in the box, it's proficiency. So you have to go out and say, all right, let's go throw this ladder against this building. We're going to do a straight ladder, which is one that just one piece.
Right.
And you have to do it a certain way and you have to do it proficient before you're checked off. And we've seen a lot of improvement since then because now we can go back and say, "Oh, wait, you've never been shown this? Well, this paperwork that we've got in your file shows you did." Right. Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah. When you made chief, what was something that you weren't prepared for?
The politics. I thought I was, but I wasn't. Politics is a loose term. It's more of the public perception, the public eye,
Sure.
It's just all eyes on you kind of thing. I didn't realize just how intense that was going to be.
How did you deal with when you had a firefighter get killed a couple of years ago on the job? Because everybody's going to come to you for support.
Yeah. I don't know. That's kind of one of those, I guess you do it and then you look back and, well, how did I get through that kind of thing? I think it was just, I was so caught up in it. I didn't realize what I was doing. And then looking back, I said, well, I think I survived that kind of well. I don't know that there's a right or a wrong way to do things, but I had some guys in the county, some other chiefs that reached out, and if it wouldn't been for them, I don't know where I'd have been.
It's amazing how peers reach out to even like in our business. Because I don't know if you remember, Pete's brother Dewey was one of the owners, and then when Dewey got killed, we had so the whole his funeral was crazy. I mean, all the public safety there, but in the Motorola community, I had a gentleman drive every week from Columbia to Myrtle Beach to stay with me. Thursday night, we'd spend all day Friday together, and he'd drive back Friday night. just to try to help me out because I didn't know anything.
Right.
And I was the guy now. And I mean, that kind of stuff is invaluable when you get peers and mentors that reach out to you and say, it'll be all right, I'll help you through
Well,
this.
we've got the State Firefighters Association and we've got the State Fire Chiefs. They're two different associations. And the State Fire Chiefs decided we need to put together what they call a Chiefs peer network. And what we're looking for is when that happens, because it's going to happen again in the state, it's just a matter of time. Who looks out for the chief? Who takes care of the chief? Because, I mean, I could talk to my assistant chief. I could talk to my captain. But you need somebody that's on your level. And so I'm a part of that peer network because, unfortunately, I've been through it. And we're just kind of getting our little team off to a start. But it's starting to gain a lot of traction. But, you got to think. When you're up here, there's nobody else to turn to. But you're the one that look left and right, but you can't look down.
Yeah, you're the one that everybody's looking for answers from. Right. And like during the hurricane, that's what we would have daily calls through work about the storms coming up. We had our Florida team, we had the whole team. And every time I was like, all right, we've taken care of public safety. Now here's the employee situation.
Right.
And I was like, we're going to have people that lose their home, that's never lost their home before, and they're going to come to me looking for advice. And I've never been in that situation. So we had, in the background, we had HR working on stuff to be able to answer these. Fortunately, we didn't have to deal with any of that stuff. But
there's a fire chief handbook that have you seen the movie National Treasure, Book of Secrets?
Yeah.
I kind of felt like that's what it was. I mean, it's not that formalized, but it's like, here's the fire chief's handbook, and you look through it, and it tells you how to do a lot of things, and it tells you how to conduct a funeral and this kind of thing. And so I kind of had I read through it because I felt like it was good information, and there was some stuff about funerals in there, and Horry County had a few for. When I first became chief, had a few funerals, so I've been through that. So I kind of knew what to expect on that aspect, but it was one of those, I'll never have to deal with this, so what does it matter? And then it happened. So I went back and started looking in the memory vault of how to handle things, and I just did the best I could. I wanted to make sure that our people were taken care of, and it's service above self. You want to make sure everybody's taken care of before yourself. But
that's what a leader does.
Well, and it's I realized real quick, and I've always heard this, but I've never accepted until that scenario that it's going to catch up with you. You got to look out for yourself. And I was like, I'm fine. When you hit that wall, it's there, and it ain't no stopping. You're going to hit it head on, and you're going to knock you down. Yeah. And I just got to the point where I was done. I'm tapping out. And I called my boss. I said, I can't do it. He's like, well, do what? I said, I need some help. I said, I can't get through it. So I actually turned the fire department over to Horry County. They actually ran the fire department. And we named a guy from Horry County, and he kind of took care of the fire department because I said, I've got to take care of my guys, and let me turn my back on this a little bit, and we take care of our people. And y'all handle the chest pains call on Leonard Avenue. I don't have time for that. Yeah, and that was tough for me. I've always wanted to be the guy that's in charge, and to admit that it's too much. That was tough. So when we had the storm, I'm the fire chief / emergency manager, and I was trying to do full-time emergency management. We started having fire chief issues. We started having staffing issues, and not bad, just, who's going to work where, and, so-and-so's got to go home because the roof blew off his house. Just little things like that, that on a normal day is easy, but I'm overwhelmed with the city. Right. So I looked at my boss. I said, I can't do both. I said, so I'm either going to be the fire chief or I'm going to be your emergency manager. He said, I need you in here. So I said, I'll be right back. I walked in there, opened the door to my assistant chief. I said, you're the acting fire chief, and shut the door. And he chased me down the hall. He's like, whoa. He's like, what's going on? I said, you have the full authority of the fire chief. Handle it. And I walked away, and he handled it. That's just what we do. And we actually went back and rewrote our plan, our emergency operations plan after the storm, and we put that as a component. Yeah. Now it's natural. It automatically happens, and people know that. And it's happened in the worst situation, right? So next time we know the process, it'll be fine. I didn't want to get to that point where I had a nervous breakdown. Yeah. And I didn't want to get to that point. So I went ahead and just it's not good for anybody. It's not good for you. It's not good for the city. It's not good for the community. Right. But I wanted to get ahead of it this time, and I didn't want it to be a situation where, I'm up against the ropes and I come out swinging the wrong way. Yeah. So I just got rid of one topic and turned my back to the fire department per se, and started handling the emergency management side. And it worked like a well-oiled machine. It's just, it was pretty phenomenal how things went down. Yeah. I mean, just
reflecting and remembering all the stuff and as much information. The city of Conway put out more information than I think anybody else put out.
That was when we spoke to that group last week. That was one of our things we wanted to make sure everybody understood, is just how transparent we were. And it was like that for a reason. If you give somebody an answer before they can ask, it makes all the difference in the world. And the reason for that is lessons learned. In 2008 or 2015, we had that first flood. Well, number one, we didn't think it was going to flood. So we were automatically behind the 8 ball. And we had never set up our emergency operations center in our new building. Just a lot of things that all happened at once that really set us back.
Right.
So we didn't have a public information officer at all. So I was using my social media to try to push a message out, and I was just getting bombarded because people were looking for answers.
Right.
And Matthew was the same way. So when we had Irma, it was a chance to try our new plan out. We were like, hey, let's set up the room a different way. Let's do this, let's do that. And let's add a public information component. Still didn't have a public information officer, so one of our firemen served in that role. And fortunately, nothing happened with Irma, but we were ready. We had, Twitter set up. We had multiple monitors, and we were ready. So when Florence came around, between Irma and Florence, we hired our public information officer, and we had a dry run 10 days before the storm. We actually did a scenario with the whole city, and one of our components was we need to get the message out. We need to be clear and concise, and let's get ahead of this thing, and let's use our public information officer for the right reasons. And so from Jump Street, it was just everything, and we reached 1.4 million people.
Yeah, it was unbelievable
in 20 days.
The amount of data, information you guys were putting out.
I forgot the number, but there was X amount of posts on the city's page, and it reached 1.4 million people. Yeah. But I mean, we would put a post out, and it would be shared thousands of times in an hour. Yeah. It's just unbelievable. Yeah.
When it goes back to the community.
Yeah. I had a friend. He's in he does medical supplies. He sells medical supplies. And he told me, he said, man, I was looking for your messages from the city so I could push it out to my people. He said, we were just impatiently waiting. He said, if it had been more than an hour, we were starting to wonder what's going on, and he said, it's just, you get to that point where you're looking for it. He said, y'all gave out more information than the media.
Yeah,
I said,
you did.
But we wanted to. That was our point. And we would look at each other and say, put that out. But you know what? Halfway through the event, when everything was just kind of starting ramping up, somebody at Hardee's in Conway put out a message that we were going to close or shut the water off, the municipal water supply at Hardee's, which is whatever. So we had to get ahead of that. And I think out of everything, we were behind the 8 ball on that a little bit, and we had to play catch up on that. But we were getting interviewed by LA Times, New York Times, CNN, Fox News, Weather Channel.
Yeah, I remember seeing you do some live interviews.
So you do that, and then what happens? It goes to the AP, and it just spreads like wildfire. So when I think it was probably the last day or two, things were really starting to calm down. We're almost crest day. We're kind of that lull. We're sitting around, and we're just kind of, in this state.
20 days into it.
Yeah. So our PIO, she had a website where she could do searches by hashtag or whatever, and she was doing searches and finding articles in New Zealand and Russia and the UK. I mean, it was crazy to see yourself in another foreign language.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just.
Yeah, it was fun. Since I know you personally, it was fun watching you doing the interviews and the Weather Channel stuff, and so your fire chief, your emergency management director. You're the spokesperson at some point. I mean, you were feeling a lot of different shoes.
Well,
then.
It's like looking at the CNN interview. I was standing in the middle of 501 and 378, the busiest intersection in Conway, with cars going by because we're doing a full-fledged evacuation, which I thought I'd never see in my career. Lane reversals, the whole bit. And we're standing there talking to CNN of all people. And I did that interview twice, and I did an interview somewhere in the community with CNN. So I did 2 of them, and I did 2 with the Weather Channel. And so I got to know the Weather Channel guy pretty good. And I added him on social media, and he actually added me back, which was pretty cool. Yeah. And then one day I randomly commented on one of his things, and he commented back. So I was like, see, I'm friends with the Weather Channel.
It's weird how that makes you feel, right?
Just, he's a normal person. Yeah. And we had personal conversations, and I brought my wife by, and she got to meet him, and she thought it was the coolest thing ever. And we just talk to them like humans.
Yeah.
They're celebrities per se, but they're humans too.
Yeah.
And they're just as interested in what's going on as we are.
Sure.
You know, and they were just mesmerized by how bad Conway was. He said, you know, I just never thought I'd see this in a town like Conway.
Yeah.
Because we were kind of and I know there was a lot of damage to Sock's-T. I mean, I get that, but we were still kind of the hub for everything.
Sure. And
everything kind of happened in our city.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
The lane reversal stuff, didn't that come after Floyd?
After Charlie.
Okay.
2004. Hurricane Charlie, I think they did an evacuation, and it was a kind of a disaster. So the state got together and they come up with the plan. And it's always been tabletop. It's never been executed until this storm. Yeah,
because I remember with Floyd, I was living across the waterway in River Oaks and decided that we were going to come to Myrtle Beach. And I come to Myrtle Beach and was at the intersection at 3rd Avenue South and Kings for like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're not leaving. I'm not getting stuck in the middle of traffic.
Right.
And we left at midnight, drove straight to Charlotte or whatever. It wasn't a problem. But yeah, the lane reversals. But it's all from lessons learned.
It is. And
after action reports.
And our after action for Florence was pretty lengthy, but it was little things, but it's part of a big piece of the puzzle. And I feel like if we were to have another event this year, I think we'd be better prepared. Yeah. And I think you'd see a lot of stuff happen up front.
Right.
You know, as prepared as we were this storm, I thought we were still kind of behind on some things. But I tell a lot of people it's a skill set I wish I didn't have, but I do. Yeah. So, I mean, I want to do the right thing.
How long have you been with the city?
I started as a junior firefighter, cadet is what we called it, in 1994. So going on 25 years. So
you'll be able to retire shortly, right?
I started let's do the timeline. Started that in 94, became a volunteer in 96.
Okay.
2 years, 2 months, 2 weeks, 2 days. It's weird. Did a volunteer from 96 to 2000. Yeah, 2000, I went to work for Horry County. And I worked for them for a year, and I went through my training and whatnot. So my dad was assistant chief, and the nepotism laws, I couldn't work. So I had to wait for him to retire. So I said, well, I'll go into Horry County and get my training. And I said, maybe one day I'll go back to the city. And I wanted to, but I said, well, you know, if I get over to Horry County and like it, I'll stay.
Right. And
I love my job. I really did. I like working for Horry County. But I was only there a year, and he retired. And then it's just, I really want to go to Conway. So
go back home.
Yeah, so I went back home. And so I started there in 2001. And then I just kind of moved up from there. So I worked for the Conway Police Department from 99 to 2000 as a dispatcher. And so I had a year with the city, and that was state retirement. So I used some of my, it's called 1% money. It's fireman fund money. We have a little retirement account. So I used some of that money to buy that year. So I actually dropped my retirement down to 99. This is my start date. So I can retire in 2024. Okay,
but you don't have to leave. I mean, how long can you work? I mean, for just until you decide I've had enough.
Push me out in a wheelchair, I guess. Yeah. It's August 11th, 2024 is when I can officially retire.
Right.
And that's like my eligibility date. And I just, with all the stress that I've had with multiple storms and a line of duty death and just life in general, if I make it that far, I feel like I'll be doing good.
Yeah.
I mean, I know if I had hair, it'd be great. I mean, that kind of thing. But it's tough, man. And I always felt like if I ever got in that position, I'd be that guy that would be the chief until they pushed me out in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
Tubby Hendrick was the fire chief from 1960 to 1988. So, you know, he did it for 28 years. I was like, well, I want to be Tubby, and I want to do it for 30. You know, no.
Yeah.
Not now. I love my job. I don't know what I would do outside of Conway Fire, but I'll be 45 and can retire, but I just don't know that my body can handle it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And I just think that it'll be time for me to move on at that point.
Well, I appreciate you sharing, because I don't think people realize the stress.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, I've talked to plenty of people that think, you know, these guys are just hanging out and cooking. And like, we lived across the street in the cottages.
Right.
And I'm an idiot, and I'm going to tell you this story. All the smoke detectors in the house start going off. And I'm like, I don't smell smoke. What's going on? I climb up in the attic. I'm looking for smoke. I call the fire department, because I know that's like, please don't come running code. But something's going on. And it was a dead battery.
Yeah.
And I was so embarrassed. But those guys left in the middle of either fixing or eating dinner. So the next day, the wife and I took them dinner up there, but it was so humiliating.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we run so many bad calls, and that's the big thing now is the PTSD from the public safety. You got to get ahead of these feelings. You got to talk to somebody, and that's one thing I'm really starting to push too. I'm like, you guys need to make sure you're talking to someone. If you've got these feelings, you need to get them out. And, we went through a tragedy, and I know what I experienced, and I know I've had to talk to people, so I can't imagine what they're going through. The guys that were there that day, that kind of thing. So they got to get ahead of these things, and they got to get these feelings out. And that stuff adds up.
It does.
And I've done a lot of speaking engagements. I'm not going around trying to be on a public speaking tour, but I've done a lot of speaking engagements over the years. And the hardest one I've ever accomplished was talking to second graders. Yeah. I told the story the other day. I got asked by my friend to go to PD Elementary School about 2 years ago. She says, come talk to my second grade class. I said, well, you're not in my coverage area. She said, well, just come as my friend. I was like, okay. So I show up thinking I'm going to talk to about 12 or 15 second graders. No, it's the whole second grade in the auditorium. Yeah. And they had selected a few, and they all had little cards. They had written down questions. And I had a microphone, and I'm standing in front of all the second graders and all the teachers and everything. And they all came up and asked their question. It was, have you ever been to a fire in a hotel? Just little things like that for second graders. Awesome. Well, then we ran out of questions, but still had some time to kill. So it was a free-for-all. And they absolutely grilled me with questions. I mean, I had a lot of fun, but I felt like that was the most pressure I ever had. Because I was getting a lot of questions about, well, what's the worst call you've ever been on?
Yeah.
And then, of course, I didn't want to tell a second grader that we lost a fireman. So I was trying to think of something on their level, and that was stressful. That was rough.
Yeah.
So it really made me, and where I'm going with this, because I tend to go off in left field, but where I was going with that is it really made me think about what is the worst call I've been on and why. And there's a few, but one that stands out, we had a vehicle accident near Walmart back in 1999-ish, and I was on the Horry County Rescue Squad. It's all volunteer group. We would run medical calls kind of thing. And I was with another guy, and we had a truck that had the jaws of life, and we'd go run these calls. So it was a really bad wreck, so we were responding. We get there, and if you've ever taken CPR class and you're doing child CPR, they always have the scenario, fix my baby.
Right.
Fix my baby. And she hands me a lifeless kid, little kid, Baby got ejected out of the car seat, went through the windshield, and I'm 21 years old and 22 years old, and it's the whole fix my baby thing. That thing.
I couldn't do it, man.
No, and back then I was, I felt like I could just deal with it. And that was just one of those where one day the memory pops up in the back of your mind, and it's like, what do you do with it?
Yeah.
And,
well, talking about to somebody in mental health, I decided I need to go talk to a therapist last year. And so we're raised, you're big burly guys. You don't show emotion. You carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. And I actually, when I went through the process, I was like, I want a female. So at least I feel like I could be honest.
Yeah.
I can't sit here and cry on Lee's shoulder, right? So I want a female, and we've just talked, and I brought her on to do probably the third podcast that I did, is because of the first 13, suicide or suicidal thoughts have come up at least 3 times.
Right.
And I'm like, mental health is so important, and don't let your being a guy, don't let any of that stuff get in the way. Go talk to somebody. That's what they're there for.
Right. And it's, I guess a lot of things that were been kind of shoved down my throat over my career, I didn't really think a lot about until the line of duty death or two of these major hurricanes and whatnot. And one of them has always been the employee assistance program. We've had that for years. Yeah. And it's one of those, nobody uses that. Right. Yes, they do. They use a lot more than you realize now. And I think, and honestly, because it's becoming a topic that people are not afraid to talk about. Yeah. People are seeing the effects of the PTSD or the effects of long-term exposure to this stuff. And, and it's becoming a really hot topic, and I'm glad that people are getting ahead of it. Yeah.
Somebody hands you a lifeless baby, that's going to stick with you.
Yeah. And it's just, but I've also ran a few calls that at the time were just routine calls, and those are the ones that haunt you the most. Like the lady that she was probably 85, 90 years old and fell into a trash can between the sink and the oven, and fell face first in the trash can and laid there for 2.5 days.
Oh my
And
God.
those are the calls that really get to you. You know, you're just like, well,
I couldn't do it, man.
No,
It's that kind of stuff, you know. And I was talking to retired Lieutenant Adams from City of Myrtle Beach, and he was telling a story about, again, another child, and I don't remember the details, but like they dropped Lieutenant off on the way back to the station at home because the child reminded him so much of his own son.
Right.
And like he's telling me this 20 years after the fact, and he's getting emotional about it. I mean, they carry this stuff forever.
It's just, it's crazy. I was Hurricane Fran, 1996. I wasn't quite a volunteer yet. I was still a cadet, hanging out at the fire station. And we only had one station back then. I was living the dream. You know, I'm hanging out with the guys. Well, the hurricanes, it kind of skimmed us, but it was bad. You know, we had some damage. And in the middle of the night, about 4 a.m., we got a call for a fire in Horry County's area, but they called us for assistance. And we're going down 501 dodging trees and trying to drive fast. There's 5 of us piled in a car. We're going for assistance. And we get there, and there's this double wide trailer with just massive amounts of fire blowing out of it. You know, just didn't seem like a big deal at the time. There was 5 kids in there that all died. And there's 3 or 5. And here I am, you know, 17 years old, and I was told to stay out of the way. And what was so bad is the little girl, she was probably 13 or 14, was the babysitter of the little kids, and the parents left, and it was a double-sided deadbolt. I don't know if you don't have one, but where you have to lock it with a key. Yeah. Basically locking her in there so she couldn't leave from the outside. So she gets to the door with the little kids and couldn't get out.
So it's a key on both sides.
And she died at the door. And I mean, that thing bothered me bad.
Oh,
I mean, because when I could see them, you know, that was the first time I'd ever seen that. So now when I go around and I talk to, especially older groups, when I talked to a church a few years ago, and I talked to the I forgot what they call it, but it's the older crowd, the elderly crowd. And they're asking about tips and all that. I was like, well, how many do you have a double-sided deadbolt? They were all like, you know, because we don't want nobody to get in. They can break the window and reach trying to unlock the thumb latch.
I used to have one for that reason.
Yeah. And I get it. And I said, well, think about this. I said, what if your house caught on fire and you got to the door and you couldn't get out?
Yeah.
Oh. Did I get in? Sometimes I tell that story, sometimes I don't. But I mean, that's big time stuff.
Yeah. Well, that comes from experience.
Right.
Because all I think about is it's more likely that somebody's going to break the window out and sneak in my house when I'm sleeping in bed, as opposed to the house catching on fire and I'm stuck in there with my 8-year-old.
Right. Well, you know, it's like the straightening irons. You know, my wife's real bad about double checking the straightening iron. And I love it because I went to a call. It was a guy that worked for the city. His daughter had been straightening her hair. She was late for school. She leaves it on the bed and goes to school. Well, she shuts her bedroom door. So this is a 2-for-1 here. Number 1, don't leave your straightening iron on the bed because it won't turn off.
Right.
Burnt the room up. Number 2, she shut her door so it didn't spread. Rest of the house, not a bit of damage. You get to the hallway and you look in her door. There's all these little black finger-looking things coming out the door. Open the door. I'm talking it burnt all the way down to the studs.
Wow.
So it's just, you know, sealed up room. So it's, you know, it's a 2-for-1. Number 1, don't leave your straightening iron. Number 2, always keep your door shut.
How that my brother was in an apartment that he caught on fire. He was fixing French fries on the stove. It catches on fire, and instead of turning it off and putting a lid on, he decides he's going to carry it outside. Oof. Fire blows back on him. He drops it. It goes everywhere. Burns the apartment up.
Right.
The Red Cross was there so quickly. Mm-hmm. How close do you guys work with the Red Cross? Because they're there immediately, right? I mean, to help people out.
They have people. That's all they do. They're there. They're kind of like on call. There's volunteers, and we always call from the scene. And we'll either coordinate it ourselves, or if their family's still there, we'll just put them in touch with the family, and they're usually there within an hour. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And they'll get them somewhere to stay that night. They'll give them some food vouchers, and then the next day they'll start working on a plan for them to get them back on their feet.
One more question. Because I know how much you do and everybody in the public safety, but they get no credit, are our dispatchers.
Oh, yeah.
How amazing are the dispatchers? Like, I would always bring a radio home during bike week and listen.
Oh.
It's like they're running everything. They're so calm, and they're talking to this person, and you can hear the same person key up on a different. They're keeping everything organized, and they're never put in the limelight. Right. They get very little credit.
Well, I was a dispatcher for years, so I got to see that side of it. Now, I work for Conway Police, so it's not as chaotic, but we did have some chaotic times. You know, we did police and fire as well. Well, number 1, it was hard for me to be the fireman and answer the fire radio, you know, toning out the fires. But One night I had a shooting and a structure fire at the same time. I was by myself, and I was doing both. So it can happen, and it's tough. But I learned back then because I would get kind of amped up on the radio, and I had a guy come in and sit down and talk to me, one of the older sergeants, and he came and he said, just always remember that if you're excited, we're excited.
Right.
If we're excited, you're excited. He says, so we got to try to calm this thing down a little bit. And it was a conversation that's carried me through my career.
Sure.
And I had a guy from, he was working at North Myrtle Beach at the time. He was going through the Executive Fire Officer program with the National Fire Academy. And he was part of his research paper he was writing, something to do with career progression, I guess. He wanted to come interview me about being the fire chief. And he said, you know what I've noticed about you? I was like, well, I'm kind of scared to ask, but that's good. He said, I've noticed that every incident that you're on, or every time you talk on the radio, you're the same. No matter if you're burning a city block down or it's just a trash can on fire. He said, you're the same on the radio. And I said, you want to know why? And he said, why? I said, if I'm excited, you're excited. If you're excited, I'm excited. He said, what does that mean? And I told him the story. He goes, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But it's true. I said, sometimes I have to really focus on driving it back home and being calm. I said, but if I get excited, what's everybody else going to do? Yeah. They're going to be like, oh my God. Yeah. You know, and it's just, it's like when we had the line of duty death, you know, I had to get on the radio and kind of start calling for some resources. And they could tell in my voice something was wrong, but I didn't get excited. I didn't want to be the guy to get on the radio and start screaming for help.
Right.
I said, because I got to keep this crowd calm.
Right.
And it's tough. I mean,
I'm sure.
It's tough.
In that situation, absolutely.
But it's just, it goes back to being a dispatcher, you know. They're there and they're all caught up in it just like we are, but then they're cut off from it. So they don't get they don't get to see what's going on. They don't get to watch what's going on. So they're in a room with no windows. Yeah.
And then they move on to the next one immediately.
Exactly. And so after our line of duty death, a couple of days later, I actually went up there, did the shift that was working that day, and I checked on them, and they're just like, man, that means a lot to me. And nobody ever thinks about us. I was like, been there, done that. Yeah. I said, trust me. I said, y'all are the ones that keep the ship afloat. And I said, without you, what will we do? Yeah. And it's tough.
It is. It's a good group of people and good leadership. Back from when Tony was doing it to Renee. I mean, it's good folks.
Yeah, I try to keep up with them. And I guess it's because I have that part of me as well. And I did that. You know, I understand what they're going through. Horry County Dispatch is a lot bigger, but still the same job, you know. So I get it. I mean, I really do.
Well, Chief, thanks for doing this, my friend. I appreciate it.
I've enjoyed it. I've had almost 25 years. I've seen a lot. So I really want to, I think there's a lot that needs to be told, and I want to make sure that the story's out there. And like I said about the PTSD and all that stuff, I think people need to start talking.
They do.
And I don't know.
Just don't, there's nothing to be ashamed of. No. Just do it.
And that's the hurdle I got over a long time ago. I'm not afraid to talk. I'm not afraid to cry.
Yeah.
I don't want to cry in front of people, but I mean, you got to get it out, because if not, trust me, it's going to find a way out.
Yeah.
It's going to bowl its way out.
Yeah.
So.
Well, again, I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man.
Thanks, buddy.
Yep.